Hey guys, welcome back to Nova Gaming, and today we're finishing up our look at the classic set in Hearthstone, and we are looking for the best cards in the classic set. And last time we were looking at cards that were all really simple and had really easy descriptions of what they did. But in this video we're looking at some of the more complicated cards and seeing if we can decide which of those are the best cards in the classic set. So just like in our last video, we're going to be using the same set of values to give a value to each of the cards that we look at in this video. But this time we're going to be looking at cards that have a lot of conditions or different effects, and we're going to be trying to look at the best case scenario for each of those cards and see how good each of those cards can be, assuming you get their full effect. And the first set of cards that we're going to look at is cards that have a pretty simple condition to just get their full effect. And the first two that we're going to look at are cards that require a specific tribe of minion. And it just so happens that the best of those cards are both hunter cards, and they both require you to control a beast. And so on the left, we have Kill Command. And like I said earlier, we're going to look at the best case scenario for Kill Command. So in this case, we're looking at if you do control a beast, Kill Command is a 3 mana deal 5 damage, which dealing 5 damage is actually worth over 4 mana. So you get an extra mana worth of value when you play Kill Command with a beast. And then it's a similar story for Houndmaster on the right, because Houndmaster is a 4 attack, 3 health minion, but if you control a beast, you can give that beast +2/+2 and taunt. And so when you combine all those stats, Houndmaster gives you a little over 5 mana worth of value. And so another pretty simple condition that some cards have is combo, because with combo, you just have to have played at least one card before that turn. So that is what the next two cards we're going to look at have. And again, for both of these cards, we're going to assume that you activate the combo requirement, and we're going to look at how good the card can be when you do achieve that requirement. And so SI7 Agent on the left is a 3/3 that deals 2 damage. And that would be 4 1/3 mana worth of value, but it only costs 3. So you're getting a little over a 1 mana discount on that. And on the right, we have Eviscerate, which can be a 2 mana deal 4 damage, which is obviously just really good for what it costs. That effect is worth over 3 mana worth of value. And we saw Eviscerate get played in a lot of rogue decks until they took it out of standard format. So this one still got played even in current Hearthstone. And so one of the patterns that I'm kind of seeing is that with these cards that just have a condition on them to get an extra effect, Blizzard was willing to put about 1 extra mana worth of value on these cards if you could complete the condition on them. And so we're going to look at 2 more conditional cards, and one of them follows about this same power level, but one of them is just way better than all the others we've looked at. And so Southsea Deckhand is a 1 mana 2/1 that can have charge if you have a weapon equipped. It's a pretty simple condition, and you get about 1 mana extra value out of it, just kind of in line with those other cards that we've looked at. But then we have Kirin Tor Mage, which is a 4 attack, 3 health minion, but it makes a secret that you play this turn cost 0. And Mage Secrets cost 3, so it's giving you a 3 mana discount on a secret that you play this turn. And since Kirin Tor Mage only costs 3 mana, when it gives you a 3 mana discount, it basically makes itself free. And that 4 attack, 3 health body is basically worth 3 health on its own. And so that's why it gives you 3 extra mana worth of value. And so obviously this card is really strong, and it's not really any surprise that this card still easily saw play in modern Hearthstone. Any mage deck that had secrets in it would at least think about putting Kirin Tor Mage in. And now we're going to change tracks a little bit and go look at some of Druid's Choose One cards. And with Choose One cards, you get 2 options of what the effect does. And so it would make sense that those cards would have a lower power level than the other cards because they have more flexibility. And that's basically what we saw. I pulled the best 4 Choose One cards, and even these 4 Choose One cards were only fair. The options you got to choose between were all pretty much fair. And for all the choose one cards that were worse than these, you were actually getting less value than what you paid for the card to make up for the added flexibility that it gave you. And so we have Ancient of War here on the left, and when you play it, it can either be a 10-5 or a 5-10 with taunt. And both of those options end up being just slightly better than what you would expect to get for 7 mana. One thing I will say about Ancient of War is that it made me more confident that I'm actually evaluating these cards about the same way Blizzard did when they first designed them. Because I wouldn't think that a 10-5 is as good as a 5-10 with taunt. I would think the second option would be a lot better. But when Blizzard first designed this card, they obviously thought those two options were both at similar power levels. And when I did the math on this, according to our system, they came out to be very similar power levels. And because of that, I think the math that I'm using to look at these cards is similar to how Blizzard designed them originally. And then over here on the right, we have Wrath. And again, both of Wrath's options are pretty fair stat-wise. What's surprising is this card would actually get run sometimes, even years after it was printed. And it was just because Druid doesn't have a lot of options for early removal and early card draw, and so this was a good option that actually sometimes got played because it was flexible removal, and you could also use it to draw some cards too. And then over here we have Druid of the Claw, which can either be a 4-4 with charge or a 4-6 with taunt. And when you look at it, both of those are pretty fair for 5 mana, so we can see that Blizzard just gave you two pretty fair options for that choose one card. But then with Cenarius, things get interesting. This evaluation right here is actually for his second effect, so making the 5-8 and then also making 2/2/2 treants with taunt. And this opens up an interesting topic, which is cards that summon more than one minion and how to deal with that. And the most common way that people deal with that is to just add up all the attack of the separate bodies and add up all the health of the separate bodies and then just kind of treat it as one big card. So in this case, 9 attack, 12 health with taunt. And if you looked at it that way, Cenarius' second option looks really good. It's over 10 mana worth of value. And it might be a good effect, but I think this is actually a separate issue of whether adding up the stats of separate bodies and adding them all together is really the correct way to look at that. And as an example of that, I actually also went and got the best 2 other cards that summoned multiple minions. And so here they are. And so I evaluated these cards the same way, where you lump all the attack together and you lump all the health together and you treat it as one big body. And when you do that, Onyxia is a 9 mana card that would be the equivalent of 14 attack and 14 health. And that's almost 14 mana worth of value. And that's pretty crazy for a 9 mana card. And then Savannah Highmane is obviously very good. It's a 6/5 that summons the 2/2/2s after it dies. But Savannah Highmane also is an example of another card. In this case, it's a Deathrattle card. But again, we're looking at these cards in the most optimistic way possible. And so I treated its 3 bodies all as one and kind of ignored that those 2 smaller hyenas came out as a Deathrattle. And so then as we were looking at Deathrattle cards, I went and got the best Deathrattle cards. And when I looked for it, there was one other Deathrattle card that was just so much better than all the others. And so it's just insane how good Tyrion is. It's a 6/6 minion, it has taunt, it has divine shield, it gives you a 5/3 weapon, it just does so many things that it's so efficient. The only thing that's a little bit awkward about this card is decks that want a 6/6 with taunt and divine shield sometimes don't also want a 5/3 weapon, but this card just makes up for it just in terms of how efficient it is. And Tyrion has been used a lot in Paladin decks throughout Hearthstone's history. Maybe just recently it started to be not quite good enough to get included. But whenever Paladins were looking for a big minion or a big Deathrattle minion to include, Tyrion was always a good choice. And the last couple cards I wanted to look at in this video were cards that I had a little bit of trouble assigning a specific value to, because they don't have a specific amount of value that they give. Instead, they scale with something else in the game. For instance, Sorcerer's Apprentice, 2 mana, 3/2, but it makes your spells cost 1 less. And if you're trying to answer the question, how good is Sorcerer's Apprentice? Well, that depends on how many spells you cast while she's on the field. In her case, she's actually almost efficient, even if you get no discounts with her. But as you get 1 spell discounted, 2 spell discounted, and keep going like that, she ends up being really good. And then Murloc Warleader is in a similar spot. It's a 3-mana minion with 3 attack and 3 health, but it gives all your other Murlocs +2 attack. And if you want to look at how good that is, well, how many other Murlocs do you have in play? For each other Murloc, that's 1.3 mana worth of value. And you can see the numbers that come out here depending on how many other Murlocs you have. It really turns out that you only need 1 other Murloc for Murloc Warleader to be good. And for both of these cards, they've actually been really good throughout all of Hearthstone's history. If you could ever play a Murloc Warleader while you had a bunch of other Murlocs, that was almost always the finisher for Murloc decks. And mages always loved playing a Sorcerer's Apprentice and then just playing a bunch of cheap spells so they could just rack up a whole bunch of discounts. And both of these cards were actually so good that they were actually taken out of the core set for 2021 so that they wouldn't just always be really good cards that were always available in the game. And then my last 2 cards in this video were 2 more cards that also scale really well off of other things. So first you have Questing Adventurer, which for every card you play while he's on the field, he gains +1/+1. And with this card, you have to play at least 2 cards after it for it to be good. But one of the scary things about this card was that if you played it and then played a few cards, if it survived into your next turn, you could play a bunch more cards and it could just grow to insane values and it would be almost unremovable at that point. And then, of course, we have Questing Adventurer's big brother, Edwin Van Cleef. And Edwin grows twice as fast as Questing. Now, the one downside is that he only grows the turn he's played, so he doesn't keep on getting bigger. But it was not unusual in decks that ran Edwin to be able to drop 3-4 cards before you played him, and then play a 10-10 Edwin on turn 4, and just basically win the game right there. So in terms of cards that had the highest cap of how efficient they could be, Edwin ended up being at the very top of that list. And that was the last card I had to look at in today's video. So feel free to let me know what you guys thought about this video in the comments section below. And if you guys have any other videos that you would like me to make, feel free to let me know. In the future, I want to make some other videos looking at that question about cards that summon multiple minions and how to deal with that. And I also want to make some videos looking at the Forged in the Barrens cards and seeing how good they are. So make sure you subscribe so you see those videos.